Today, we are in our third week of Sermons from Another Dimension. And if you have your Bibles, I want to invite you to turn to the book of Philippians chapter 4. Now, the title of our sermon in our Twilight Zone episode for this week is A Nice Place to Visit. Hopefully some of you had a chance to watch this one. If you haven't, or if you watched it earlier in the week, let me give you a little synopsis of this episode. There's a gangster. His name is Henry Francis Valentine, otherwise known as Rocky. The episode begins with Rocky robbing a pawn shop. The police come. He's in a rundown. He tries climbing over this fence. He gets shot. He wakes up, he comes to, doesn't quite know what has happened, hasn't put it all together yet, doesn't know what's going on, but he meets a man dressed all in white who goes by the name of Pip. And he tells Rocky that he is who remembers this? His guide. All right, Mary is totally tracking. Now, Rocky is confused, doesn't know who Pip is, doesn't know exactly what's happened, but Rocky is who Rocky is, and so he's going to continue being Rocky. He's going to continue being the person that he has developed into. So he tells Pip that he wants his money. He's going to try to rob him. And Pip just kind of laughs at him and hands over a bunch of money and says, well, if you want more, well, there's plenty more where that came from. Pip says that he's there to give him basically whatever he desires, whatever he wants. And what does Rocky want? He wants money. He wants the best clothing. He wants the high life. He wants that apartment, the penthouse apartment. He wants women. And Pip gives all of it to him. And he starts living the high life. He goes to the casino. He starts gambling. And what happens every single time he goes to the casino, or whatever wish he has, it is granted to him immediately. He goes to the casino, whatever game he happens to be playing, if he pulls the slot lever, he wins every single time. He starts getting a little curious about what's going on. And he asks Pip, he's like, what's going on here? Like, why, how am I getting everything that I've ever wanted? Finally realizes he's dead. And he tells Pip, he's like, are you sure there isn't some mistake? Like, are you sure that I shouldn't be somewhere else in that other place? Like, what am I doing here? Are you sure there hasn't been a mistake and that I ended up at the wrong place where you go after you die? And Pip kind of laughs at him again, like he always seems to do throughout the episode. And he's like, no, Rocky, there's no mistake. Now, I want to show you the final scenes, which basically is the twist of this episode, where Rocky is getting suspicious. And so he asks Pip, he says, well, is there some way that I can look into this a little bit? And Pip says, sure, we can go to the Hall of Records. And the Hall of Records, it keeps a record of everything that you have ever done in your life. Now, as I was putting this together, I said, wow, this episode, all these episodes, would have made for a fabulous series on its own. Because when you think about a Hall of Records, and this is a total side note, by the way, so if you're like taking notes or whatever, this is like off on the side of your notes. Hall of Records, a list of everything you've ever done in your life. God doesn't work that way. So just so you all know this, God, the things that we're most ashamed of, the things that we've kind of buried and put away, God doesn't keep pulling those up and holding them over you, because God is a God of forgiveness. So again, that's a side note. But now you have Pip, who brings Rocky to the Hall of Records, and he finally sees sort of what's going on here. And I'm going to play for you some final clips of this episode. Now, if you haven't seen this yet, what's happening here is he's getting bored. He's about a month into this. He thinks he's in heaven. Everything he's ever wanted is being handed to him, but it's instantaneously given. And as he was at the table there and then with the slot machine, you can see the expression on his face, because he's realizing this isn't really as good as I thought it would be. I thought this would be amazing. But there's something going on within him where he's beginning to get a bit bored. He's not enjoying his time in this place any longer. He's not enjoying being handed everything to him on a silver platter. And again, he wants to now ask Pip, what exactly is going on here? I think I might want something a little bit different. Now, past week or so, I was talking to one of my good friends, Jeff Winters. He's a pastor in Pittsburgh. You might have seen him. We do live stream with their church. I was there speaking earlier in June. I mentioned that I was going to be doing this episode, and he tells me, that's so funny, Dave, because I did a sermon on that episode of Twilight Zone a couple of years ago. And he said, what was going on in my life at the time is that I was doing a whole bunch of funerals. A lot of people were dying, and I was just contemplating life, as you do whenever you go to a funeral, or if you're a pastor and you are officiating different funerals. You begin to ask questions and think about your own life and how you're living now. Because at a funeral, you talk about the person who has just passed away, you talk about their life, what their life was built on. You talk about some of the best qualities that they had as a person. For Jeff, when he did a sermon on this episode, what he talked about, the good life. And what exactly is the good life? What's the type of life that you all desire to have? Because we all want the good life, right? I mean, that's what Rocky wanted. He wanted the good life. Now he dies, and he thinks he has the good life, but then that gets a bit boring. And so the question that's raised with this episode of the Twilight Zone and for our sermon this morning is, well, what exactly is the good life? Is this the good life? Having everything that you could possibly imagine and desire, going to the casino and walking out with your pockets overflowing, or honestly not even needing to walk out with your pockets overflowing, because anytime you go back, you realize you can just go and get more. Is this what it means and what it looks like to live the good life? I decided for this episode of the Twilight Zone, I would read Reddit threads to figure out what other people had to say about this episode. Some of the most brilliant insights into the episode come from this one Reddit user, Miserable spelled with 2 Z's, in case you need a new screen name. Now, when searching for discussion on this wonderfully mind-bending and terrifying episode, I was saddened to see people claiming that Rocky simply had no imagination, that they wished they were in his situation, and they'd never get bored. I couldn't believe how so many people missed the point by miles. On this thread, people were saying, well, the whole problem is that Rocky just needed to be more creative. He needed to think of bigger and better things. He had to think of more and unique ways to fulfill his desires. Well, Miserable is seeing right through this, because Miserable is like, no. Everyone who has that to say about this episode, they have totally missed the point of what Rod Serling was all about. Here's how Miserable continues. It's not just about being bored. It's not about needing more creativity. It's about the fact that you are trapped. Did you see Rocky trying to get out of the door at the end there? The door was locked. Even though it seemed like he was being handed everything he ever wanted, the thing he eventually wanted at the end there, well, he couldn't access because he was trapped somewhere. So it's the fact that you were trapped somewhere where nothing is real. There is no challenge. No other human is conscious because there were no other human beings. Pip, did you see him? I'm not sure if they showed it in that clip there, but at the Hall of Records when he said, if you ever need me, just dial Pip, P-I-P, and then he disappears. He vanishes because he's not flesh and bone like us. He doesn't have what we have here where you could just reach over and touch your neighbor. Pip is, I don't know if a figment of the imagination, whatever he happens to be, he's not another real human being. So you're trapped, nothing's real, no challenge, no other humans, and everything is a lie. There is no point to anything. It sounds terrible to me. He had everything he ever wanted, but a month into this way of living, he realizes, I'm lacking something. See, Rocky had built his life on self-satisfying pursuits. Now that he was receiving everything he ever wanted and being handed everything to him with no challenge, no other person to enjoy those gifts with, and no purpose behind those pursuits, well, that was his hell. He thought he was in heaven, but then he finally came to discover, well, no, he actually was in the other place. The wisdom of this episode is that what you are building your life on now matters. Rocky's afterlife was simply a continuation of everything that he had built his life on before he died. That's why for the longest time, everything just sort of continued. He had no realization of what had happened because this was what he had been building his entire life on. What was it? Age 7, strangled small dog? I mean, from a very, very early age, this had been his trajectory. This is where his life was heading. What the episode is saying is that there are some ways of living that lead to satisfaction and contentment, and then there are other ways of living that will lead to a hell of your own making. Now, the Apostle Paul, I think he's a precursor to this episode of the Twilight Zone. Maybe Rod Serling got some inspiration from Paul. Paul wrote a letter to the church at Philippi. It's a letter known as Philippians. Maybe you've heard of it before. Sounds familiar. All right. If not, there's a Bible study coming up, and you can familiarize yourself with it. So in Philippians chapter 4, here's what Paul says. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Paul has learned contentment. Who here this morning would like to learn contentment? Satisfaction. See a few hands. Fulfillment. Not feeling trapped. Not feeling stuck. No matter what you happen to be going through in life. Paul says he has learned, what's the word? The secret of this. Which then raises a question that you're probably asking, well, hey, Paul, what's the secret? Are you going to share it with us here, please? There's a secret, but please don't just simply keep it to yourself. Which then raises another question. Who knows what is the major theme of Philippians? Keaton's on it. Joy. Here's another question for us Bible scholars. What was Paul up to when he was writing Philippians? I have a paparazzi shot of what Paul was up to. Oh, wait, sorry, it's not that one. Yeah, you would think that this is what Paul was like. I've learned the secret of contentment. Go to the casino and win every single time. Actually, no. Here's where Paul was. He was in jail. And yet still, he is saying, I have learned the secret of contentment, no matter what I am going through. So Paul has learned to find contentment, satisfaction, fulfillment. Could we say joy? In challenge and struggle. Paul has learned the secret of this way of living, and Paul wants to share that secret with you. Here's Paul's Hall of Records for challenges and struggles. I have worked much harder. I've been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1, because 40 would kill you, so 39, you wouldn't quite get there. 5 times I've received this. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move without a home. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, basically in danger from everyone. In danger in the city, danger of the country, danger at sea, danger from false believers. Let's see, what else here? I've labored, I've toiled, I've often gone without sleep, and not because the Yankees were winning. I've known hunger and thirst, and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, as if that wasn't enough, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. This has been Paul's life, his experiences. Does Paul know a thing or two about challenge? Does Paul know a thing or two about struggle? And yet, what does Paul still have in his heart? He might have been skipping like this too. I'm not sure. Here's truth number one about Paul's secret. You need and you want moments of struggle in your life. Why? Because you hear that and you're thinking, no, I don't. No, I'm like Rocky. I want it all handed to me. I don't want to have to work for it. Well, what eventually happened to Rocky? He got bored. He grew tired of having everything handed to him. Here's why you want challenge and struggle. Here's what I know about you. You want to grow. You want to expand as a person. And you don't want to be self-focused and self-consumed. The only way you can grow and expand and allow your heart to grow bigger is to face challenges and struggles. There's a lot of science behind the way in which we improve in life, the way in which we improve, maybe with a certain skill. Here's how you improve. Here's what the science says about how you improve in a skill. You do something that's a little bit beyond your abilities, but not so much that you'll become discouraged. Well, the same is true for getting better at life, which don't we all want to get better at life? We're here at this point, wherever we happen to be today, but you don't want to stay here. You want to get to the next step, the next place. Maybe you're at A here this morning. Well, your hope is that in a couple of years, you're going to be at C, and then eventually you're going to get to D, and you're just going to keep on growing. The way in which we get better at life, it's when we're stretched. It's when we're challenged. When there's nothing challenging us, you don't grow, and your world shrinks. Who you are as a person shrinks, and you start to look inward and make life all about yourself. So the first secret of contentment is you need and want moments of challenge and struggle, which then leads to truth number two about Paul's secret. It's that in lack or in struggle, your heart breaks for others. I don't know why this is, but I feel like there's almost no other way for your heart to break. You need to go through your hard times, and you go through your struggles and your challenges, and now you can grow in compassion for others and what they're facing. Because here's the truth about life. Maybe you figured this one out like me. We're all going to go through moments of challenge and struggle and heartache. And no one is exempt from that way of living. It's just inevitable. It will come. It will happen in life. As you go through your struggles, you now have greater compassion for the pain that others are experiencing. The good life, which is the question of this sermon and this episode, the good life consists in relationships over self-consumption. This is what Rocky realized. Because there's this haunting scene in this episode where he tells Pip, he's sitting down, I think he might be looking through a Rolodex or his pad, and he's saying, hey, can we call up some of my old friends? Like, this is what I want to do now. Like, all right, this is all great. I have the women, I have the clothes, I have the apartment and the money and all that. Awesome. But I want some of my friends to share in my success. And Pip looks at me and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Rocky. It doesn't work that way. You want to know why? Because they don't exist. Rocky had everything physically that he thought he ever wanted, but he had no one to share that with. The good life consists of relationships over self-consumption. Here's Paul and what we just read. Here is the ending. Remember this? Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. Why? Because Paul had great love for these communities, for these followers of Jesus. And he wanted to help them on their journey. Every day, I've thought about all of you. I hold all of you in my heart. I've gone through all these beatings, shipwreck. I've gone without food, but it's pure joy because I'm doing it out of love for getting to share the message of Jesus. And then here's what he said in Philippians right before the couple of verses that we read. I rejoiced in the Lord greatly. Now at length you have revived your concern for me. He's kind of a little nudge right here, a little, hey guys, you had forgotten about me, but hey, it's okay. I'm now filled with joy because you have revived your concern and your love for me. Contentment, joy, satisfaction, fulfillment comes from mutual care and concern shared amongst others. For Paul, it went both ways. Daily, I share concern for you. Hey, I'm overjoyed that you're thinking about me. The love went both ways. That's what you want in life. You want people who you can express love to and who will express love back to you. The good life, joy, contentment comes from mutual care and concern. Truth number 3 about Paul's secret. And this one you're not going to like. Sometimes it's good to go without. And sometimes it's good to have plenty. Too much need or too much excess is a bad thing. We need a little bit of both. I was talking to my friend Jeff about this sermon, about this episode, and one of the things that Jeff is big on, and maybe he'll be listening to this one, so yes, I've picked up on one of your themes in life right now, Jeff. In the Bible, there are moments of feasting. If you go back to the Old Testament, we have all these celebrations, all these times to celebrate life. They're intentional. And the commandments are celebrate them annually, every year. Here's when you give thanks for the harvest. Then you give thanks for this. And then you have this festival and this celebration. But then there are also moments in which we are to fast and to go without. You see both of these ways of living all throughout Scripture. There's a time to feast, there's a time to have plenty, and then there's a time to fast. There's a time to go without. Too much of going without leads to despair. Despair will crush your soul. Too much despair, constant despair, will crush your heart. But having everything on demand at your fingertips, which some of you might be ordering things on Amazon right this moment. Did I catch anyone? Having everything on demand immediately right now and having it be droned to your house by the time you get home, that's not a good thing either. Because here's what you need. You don't need Amazon. We'll pray for you. You need some moments of, hey, we're closed. And having access to whatever you need whenever you want it doesn't stretch you. It's helpful when you need diapers at 2 a.m. because you've run out and you're like, oh my goodness, is there CVS or Stop and Shop or something that's open? So it can be helpful, yes, but constant access to everything all the time, it's not what you need. It's not what you want. It's not going to grow and stretch you as a person. Sometimes you need plenty. Other times you need to go without. Truth number 4 about Paul's secret, and this is the foundational truth. I have kept this one for the end. This is the final unveiling. Let's do a little Greek. This word that Paul uses is the word secret. Mueo. Do we say mueo? All right. Here's what that word means. To initiate into the mysteries. Is that not the best definition ever? What are you doing this week? I'm being initiated into the mysteries. When anyone asks you, hey, what did you learn at church today? I was initiated into the mysteries. And then they're going to say, keep drinking that Kool-Aid. Which actually, this word was used of the pagan cults back in the 1st century. So, It means to instruct or to initiate. It's like a sorority. It's like a fraternity. And Paul's saying, I'm going to initiate all of you into the mystery. Here's a few other ways in which we can define it properly: shutting the eyes and mouth to experience mystery. How much do we focus on that which is seen? That which is right before us. And Paul's saying there's another way to experience truth. There's another way to experience the God who holds all things together. It doesn't happen by acquiring more. It doesn't happen with your eyes open. It actually happens as you close your eyes and experience something beyond that which is visible. Because there are some things in life that can't be explained. And there are some things in life that no matter how hard we try, they cannot be defined. What Paul is saying, I have learned this great mystery of contentment. And the truth about it, the secret, the mystery, it came as I closed my eyes and I felt that which is deeper than the visible. So I have learned the secret. I have learned the mystery of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do, and here's the secret, I can do all things through him who strengthens or empowers me. This is Paul's great secret. Contentment, joy in all circumstances comes from entrusting yourself to God. Now, when life looks like this, we realize, those down moments, those moments of despair, of course I need to entrust myself to God. We're okay with entrusting ourselves in these moments because we have nowhere else to turn. And this has helped Paul in those moments, I'm sure. God has empowered and strengthened him to carry through everything that he has gone through in life. So in those moments when life feels like it's down and to, where are we going? Down and to the right, Paul's saying, I've entrusted the outcome into God's hands. But we also need to entrust ourselves to God in moments like this. Because the temptation is, when everything is going our way, the temptation is to think that, well, I don't need God in this circumstance. I don't need God in this situation. In these moments, well, yeah, of course, I need a little help. But here, well, I'm a self-made man. I'm a self-made woman. I'm doing all right. I have no need for God in these moments. What Paul is saying here, I have learned to entrust myself to God in all circumstances. The moments when I'm lacking, but also the moments of plenty. See, for Rocky, he hasn't developed the character to sustain the plenty. This might have been the greatest tragedy of this episode. He hadn't developed the character in his life in order to sustain him when everything was going his way. Now, there's a beautiful quote, and this is one of those quotes I carry with me everywhere I go ever since I first heard it. It's by the author Frederick Buechner. He says this, "Here is the world." Imagine you're just learning about this thing called the world. And he says, here is the world that you will experience. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid. As we close here this morning, I want to celebrate Eucharist together. The great gift of Jesus. The gift of Jesus that holds all things together. And as we celebrate, as we come forward this morning, as we take the bread and the cup, that which represents the broken body of Jesus, the invitation is to once again entrust the totality of your life into the hands of God. Whatever you happen to be going through right now, Whatever life looks like, maybe you're in a season of need. Maybe you're in a season of plenty. Well, the invitation, the mystery, or the secret to a joy that is lasting, not a fleeting joy that's built on things that will crumble, but a joy that is durable and eternal, and a joy that can last for all eternity. It comes as we entrust ourselves fully into the hands of Christ. So that's the invitation I would like you all to think about as you come forward here this morning. Take the bread and the cup and remember again the great love, the grace, the joy of Christ that is eternally over your life.